Hello, Patriot Nation. Today is February the 6th. Russia has reached 70% of the forces needed to invade Ukraine. Commie Joe Biden, who has been compromised by Hunter's Ukraine Burisma dealings, is giving Ukraine weapons and ammo. U.S. surveillance aircraft have been doing reconnaissance in the Caribbean Sea between Cuba and Venezuela. The Canadian government proudly admits to requesting GoFundMe withhold the millions of dollars raised for the trucker convoy and has asked other crowdfunding sites to follow suit. And Democrats are quietly working once again to try to strip American citizens of our Second Amendment rights. This is Patriot Nation. First up, multiple sources are reporting that Russia has in place about 70% of the forces that experts believe they need before they can invade Ukraine. They also feel that they should, at the current deployment rates, reach 100% of the forces needed by around February 15th. So, looking at Al Jazeera here, they're looking at as many as 50,000 Ukrainian civilians could be killed, along with 25,000 soldiers, Russian soldiers. Or no, actually, probably Ukrainian soldiers. Sorry, uh, if Russia invades, it's not going to say how many Russian soldiers will be killed. Russia has established 70% of the military buildup it needs to launch a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, according to American officials cited anonymously in the U.S. media. Although the unnamed, see, I always hate all this. I mean, obviously they're unnamed for a reason because I mean this is classified or probably close to classified information. But given the deep state's history of all of this false narrative, it always does make you wonder now that we're awake how much of this is just simply propaganda, how much of it is an excuse, how much of it is it's staged information to push this agenda. Um, they did warn as many as 50,000 civilian deaths and up to 25,000 Ukrainian soldiers could be killed if Russia goes ahead. Funny how they don't talk about how many Russian soldiers would be killed um, in this thing. But, we've also got another article here from the Washington Post. U.S. predicts Russia could seize Kiev in days. Moscow calls assessment scaremongering. Again, what is the actual information? Unfortunately, I'm not in charge of, some secret spy agency with all the resources and satellite access to independently go through and verify that they do have these troop buildups or don't have these troop buildups or they're going to do this or not going to do that. And I think this highlights very, very well the dangerous situation that we as a planet are in because no one trusts anybody these days when it comes to anything that has any sort of a political tone to it. And It's really unfortunate, ladies and gentlemen, because when you have situations that are unfolding in the Ukraine and in other places around this planet that people are not able to get accurate information about, and the information that is given is always suspect because of the fact that over and over and over and over and over and over again, the communist propaganda networks have proven that they are extremely biased and only pushes what goes along with their agenda. There are so few unbiased or even slightly biased news agencies throughout the world. This isn't just an American problem, folks. I mean, this is a worldwide problem where you have a large number of people that are in government education and news that have their sole purpose just simply to push the propaganda that a very huge number of people don't trust any of the information that they're being given, and with good cause. And we've gotten ourselves into this situation now where no matter what is said, huge numbers of people are going to question it. And that's extremely unfortunate because, in my opinion, it puts people at risk. When you have a large number of people that aren't sure, if in this case, Russia is actually going to invade Ukraine, people might not be taking the proper precautions to prepare for that. And that could get people hurt or killed. And if you have, I was going to say news, but since they're not really news, they're more propaganda talking that Russia is going to do this or Russia is going to do that. And Russia has no plan on doing that. And someone gets an itchy trigger finger and accidentally, because they're stressed and, whatever, they accidentally do something that had no plans on being done. And it now starts World War III. And it's unfortunate that we have to you know be in this situation. We've also had several sources that are reporting that China has been asking Russia to hold off on invading Ukraine until after the Olympics, since obviously China has a huge amount invested in the Olympic Games. But there are also sources that are reporting that that information is completely false. And so here we have one from the Sunday Times saying that the Chinese uh, leader has said that it is a total fabrication. It has rejected reports that President Xi asked President Putin to delay any invasion of Ukraine until after the Winter Games in Beijing. So again, what is the truth? What is real? What is not real? What is actually happening? What is not happening? It, it's just insanity, folks. And I think that's one of the reasons why I decided to start this channel was because I know that most of you that watch these videos don't have time to spend hours scouring the internet, looking at 30 different articles from 30 different sources to find out that 15 of them are saying that China has asked Russia to hold off, and 15 are saying that no, they didn't say that. Obviously, this isn't my full time gig. This is just kind of a hobby right now. But there are times when I don't have the time to do as much of the research that I want to do to make sure that I am able to provide you with the information and a reasonably educated opinion on what the case is. And that's a problem. I shouldn't have to be a full time business with a staff of researchers that are spending, 5 hours a day with 4 or 5 people to try to find out whether or not it is reasonably accurate that China has asked Russia not to invade until after the Olympics. I shouldn't need a staff of, you know, 3, 4, 5, 10 people to be able to reasonably give you a report that Russia does have troops amassing around Ukraine. I shouldn't need a huge staff or know people with classified access or access to satellite, reconnaissance. That's what our governments and that's what our news agencies are supposed to be doing. It shouldn't be political at that point. But I could spend all night talking about all of that kind of negligence that's being committed by the communist propaganda outlets. Um, and we'll be here all night. And when I first sat down that I was going to do this video today, um, my goal was is that I was going to do a couple of things that had piqued my interest the last couple of days that I felt was going to be important information get out to you that you might not have seen. And it is now, as I was preparing and kind of going through the info to organize it, I ended up seeing other things. And rather than probably what was going to be a 15-minute video, probably back up to a 30, 45-minute video, considering we're already 16 minutes into this. So let's get on with the show, shall we? Uh, well, I think most of us that consider ourselves patriots and awake um, know that Commie Joe has been bought and paid for by China. And many of us also believe that he has been bought by the Ukraine because of the tens of millions of dollars for the big man that Hunter brokered for access and favors while he was VP. Many also believe that he has also been compromised because of all of the incriminating evidence that is on Hunter's laptop. So it should not come as any surprise that Tommy Joe is now supplying the Ukraine with, I think the account was 8 or 10 aircraft so far of weapons from the United States military, especially since just last year he gave the Taliban over $85 billion in state of the art military weapons and armor. So, Gateway Pundit article: the Ukraine becomes Second military, Joe Biden arms with U.S. weapons behind the 80 billion he supplied to the Taliban in 2021. Reportedly, the eighth plane of U.S. weapons arrived in Kiev overnight. Um, they're arming Ukraine now for blah, blah, blah. Reportedly, the eighth plane of weapons arrived, was unloaded in Kiev. On board is mainly 7.62 by 51 NATO ammunition. That's 308 for us here in the US. And so if we take a look at, so on this Twitter here, we have some pictures that you can see from this from the beginning again. Reportedly the eighth plane. Now, again, these aren't small planes, people. I mean, these are, that looks like yeah, it's a 747. You know, I'm guessing there's probably some C-17s in there as well. I mean, these are huge cargo planes. These are not, little Cessnas. These are not Lear jets. They're not little Gulfstreams. They're not 737s. I mean, these are 747s and C-17s, huge cargo jets. Um, so, like in this tweet, 300 reasons for Putin to think twice about invading the Ukraine. The U.S. sent a plane load of lethal Javelin anti tank weapons. So, I'm guessing that, by 300, I'm guessing that there's 300 of them uh, on this plane. Don't know how accurate that is. A little video of Javelin being launched. Again, these are not small planes, and I'm guessing that there's probably going to be some other weapons, besides those on there. But again, the deep state, the cabal, one world government, whatever you want to call them, because they're in mafia, whatever you want to call these scumbags, they've been stoking wars for hundreds of years and profiting off from it. They didn't make a dime off of wars under President Trump. And so they're working to get their money made by their puppet, Tommy Joe Biden. So if they are not able to directly profit by a heavy US presence in there, they are sure as hell going to find a way to profit kind of on the side by doing little side deals like this. And again, that's probably one of the reasons why that they left $85 billion worth of weapons and armor and munitions in Afghanistan. I can almost guarantee that it wasn't just left behind or oops. Huh, forgot about that. Couple trillion rounds of ammo, state of the art night vision, body armor. Oh god. Gee. Well, how did we forget that? No, I mean that you just don't. I mean it just doesn't work that way. There was a reason why that stuff got left there, and it is just one way of funding this machine that has been taking place behind the scenes, in my opinion. Well, the good old Canadian government has proudly admitted that it has requested GoFundMe to withhold I think they got to like just over $10 million in funds raised by the trucker convoy and is begging other crowdfunding sites to do the same. Now, originally, when this came out, GoFundMe was actually going to withhold the money. And if individuals did not request a refund for their contribution, GoFundMe was going to reappropriate that money to charities of their choice. But since the backlash from that was overwhelming, they have now backtracked that plan and are actually going to go through and automatically refund people that donated to the truckers convoy their money. Unfortunately, that really doesn't help these people that are protesting the tyrannical overreach of the Canadian government for the expenses that they're incurring in the meantime. But the bigger question that I have is why is any group that is center or right of center, especially if what you're raising the funds for is something that could in any way have a political tone associated with it, why are you using sites that are clearly communist propaganda scumbags that are pushing the communist agenda that are clearly discriminating against anybody that is center or right of center, and especially if you're a conservative, why in the hell are you continually using these sites like GoFundMe? There are other sites out there that are either more conservative oriented or at least equal opportunity that they don't care what politics you are. Why not give them your business? I understand that they're not the well-known name dropping site like GoFundMe is, but this isn't the first time that these scumbags have done something like this. This happens a lot. And many times, even if your cause that you're fundraising for doesn't have a political tone to it, if they find out that you are a conservative or a conservative group, they don't care what you're raising money for, they're canceling it because that's what liberals do. They don't like it, they're going to do everything in their power to prevent it. And the sad thing is when you're thinking of conservative crowdfunding sites, I remember hearing at least of two. But the sad part is now I'm just trying to, drop the name to give you an idea, and I can't even remember what they are. And that's pretty sad, to be honest, because how are we supposed to use sites if we don't hear of them and you see somebody talking about, hey, go to here and donate to my cause, and you're like, well, what the heck is this site? People might not be as likely to do it, unfortunately. But we need to start putting some effort into promoting these other sites that are, conservative or at least, unbiased. Over the last, couple weeks, I've noticed that there have been a number of surveillance planes that have been running reconnaissance down in the Caribbean Sea. And Monkey Works has also been reporting on this on his channel, and he was actually able to capture some of the flight tracking information on there so you could see specifically what they're doing. I usually end up just kind of finding this at random points throughout the day, and so I'm not able to capture that. But if you go over to Monkey Works site and check out his videos, he's been covering those flights the last couple of weeks. And, it makes me wonder that you've been hearing a decent amount of chatter, a decent amount of talk about Russia and China both positioning not only money, but equipment, and talking about the strategic capabilities that Cuba and Venezuela would provide them. And so when we look at this article here, this one's from the Wall Street Journal. Russia suggests military deployment to Venezuela and Cuba if tensions with the U.S. remain high. And so over here on CBS News, Russia won't exclude putting military hardware in Cuba or Venezuela amid unsuccessful talks with US over the Ukraine. Depends on the actions of American colleagues. Not going to try to pronounce that. Said Thursday in an interview with RTVI channel, adding that Russia could undertake unspecified measures involving its navy. I mean, it's no surprise that they understand the importance of this location. You look at, especially Cuba, you look at how close Cuba is to the United States and how dangerous that was back during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And today, missiles are significantly faster and more powerful than they were during the 60s. And so having China and Russia with military assets of any kind, missiles or otherwise, 90 miles or so from the US should be extremely concerning. And so if they're suspecting that China and Russia are positioning assets there, it's very understandable that they would be having surveillance flights to investigate what exactly is going on there. If we look at, another article from Newsweek, Putin shores up Cuba and Venezuela as ties as tensions with the U.S. worsen over Ukraine. And as we know, it's gotten worse. I mean, this was written back on the 24th. I think it said, yep, 24th. So, just in the last week, they've gotten even worse. So they've rejected, the written letters that the U.S. has sent, the requests. Russia's basically said that, having NATO presence there is completely unacceptable. There's a lot of things that have been going in the opposite direction and adding to the tensions that are already in place. And we know that China has put, you know, billions, I'm guessing probably closer to, the $1 billion number into Cuba. They're not just, donating that infrastructure money for roads and bridges. They're going to, there's going to be something that they're going to want in return for helping the Cuban economy. So having bases for, if, even if it's not a permanent base or an installation, if it's just some forward operating, I mean, as I've talked about in past videos, as other commentators have talked about on their sites and in their videos, Russia has been hoarding fuel. There's been a ton of reports, on China hoarding food, and in some cases, they have over 50% of, I think it's like corn and wheat. Uh, they've been hoarding fuel, they've been hoarding coal, they've been trying to, hoard water, they've been telling their people to, start, stocking stuff, start prepping. You've got very tough talk towards the US, you've got emboldened enemies, you've got a lot of stuff going on. And so having them put this kind of plan in place, you know that there's something going on somewhere. I mean, the US is not going to be sending surveillance aircraft into an area to do reconnaissance if there's nothing there of concern. And they're definitely not going to be going back time after time after time if they didn't find anything. Just like we know there's something going on over in the Ukraine because there has been a ton of surveillance aircraft doing reconnaissance in and around that area for a while. NATO has had stuff up, the US has had stuff up. I believe there was some French and UK stuff that was up. So there is something happening over there that is of great concern for them to be having that many reconnaissance flights taking place. You've got, you know, pictures and video of the Russian Navy, uh, moving into position. You've got all of the blood that's being moved over there. You've got the reconnaissance flights. You've got satellite imagery and photography. Now you've got all this stuff going on down in China and Venezuela. And then when you take into account the the speed of, the current generation of missile systems, it makes for a very strategic location. I mean, even if there's nothing in Cuba, Venezuela is a huge strategic advantage as far as distance to the United States. And knowing everything that is going on, that I shouldn't say everything, everything that we know about that's going on, understand that there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that we average folks don't know anything about, but we can guess. We could take an educated guess as to the possibilities out there. But just connecting the dots on those things start to paint a very concerning picture. And then the fact that you start talking about, false flags and, other things into that picture, it becomes even more concerning. And we all know how the Comrats are in league with the whole one world government agenda. And so it should not surprise anybody when we are starting to see that once again, the Comrats are taking new steps once again to remove our Second Amendment rights. Now, as you all know, the commie rats have pretty much failed abysmally to gain bipartisan support for any of their landmark Destroy America legislation that they've tried passing. And so it shouldn't surprise anybody that they are now moving on to try to destroy our Second Amendment rights. And the Democrat playbook always starts out with the gun registries, the universal background checks, sensible legislation, gun violence. It's the same stuff that they keep rehashing over and over and over and over and over again. Now, if we look at CNN, Biden turns his focus to gun violence as Democrats tried to shed the defund police label. They go into here talking about the high crime and Biden's, got to be tough on crime. So, in order to stop crime, we have to take away the rights of law abiding American citizens because that always, that always works and always um, puts you in a really great spot to protect people by taking away their rights. So the president has reaffirmed his call on Congress to pass gun laws like universal background checks and reach bipartisan agreement on the 2022 appropriations bill, which includes significant funding for gun control. Let's just say it as it is. It's not, you know, violence prevention, it's gun control. Because we all know that all of these scumbags are whole part of the whole, new world order that they want to put in place under the whole one world government. And that, you know, in order for that to happen, they need we, the people, to be compliant. They need us to be submissive. They need us to be controlled. And in order for that to really truly happen, they need us to be unarmed. And they've already shown that a good probably 20-30% of the population are extremely compliant and extremely submissive and extremely easy to control when it comes to this stuff. And when it comes to this stuff, and so we all know that a number of them are already unarmed because the majority of the people that are proven to be submissive and controlled for that stuff were already left to far left and were already disarmed. They were already anti gun. So they've convinced, I would say a smaller portion of the armed population into, excuse me, submission and compliance and are hoping that with this new agenda that more people will be willing to fall on board because they've been brainwashed by all this other stuff that they've been pushing, that they're going to be able to work this in there. But I am hopeful that they are dead wrong. I am very hopeful that enough people are waking up and enough people are sick and tired of the control and the propaganda and everything else that this is going to continue to push people further right. We've already got, I think, 28 incumbent communist scumbags that have decided that they are not going to run for reelection in 2022. And I'm hoping that the fact that they are now starting to push gun control once again, that that is going to be one more nail in the coffin to ensure that more and more of these communist anti-American scumbags are removed from office and we start to get back to making America great and leading from a position of power and strength and continuing this war against the one world government deep state scumbags to regain our freedoms as a country and as a free society on this planet. Stay prepared, stay informed, and stay safe. For God and country, good night.